You wake up feeling like you slept, but not like you rested. The day hasn't even begun, yet something already feels missing. It's not just motivation. It's not just a lack of discipline. It's something deeper, quieter, but far more dangerous. It's the sensation that somewhere, somehow, you've been empty. But no one around you seems to notice, right? You go through your day, answering messages, dealing with obligations, showing up in all the ways you're expected to. You laugh, nod, scroll, smile, and still, a strange weight follows you, like someone is walking just behind your spirit, ciphering something sacred. Here's the truth. They're not just stealing your time. They're stealing your life force. Every single moment you spend in unconscious reaction, every silent yes you whisper when your soul is screaming no, you are leaking power. And you don't even realize it's happening, because no one taught you to measure your energy the way they taught you to measure your time. You've been told to track your hours, watch the clock, be productive, but no one ever said guard your energy like it's holy. No one ever told you your life force is the currency of the universe and everyone is trying to spend it, but you. Think about this. Every notification that pops up on your screen, every moment you feel compelled to respond, to check, to explain, to scroll, what do you really get in return? Do you leave those moments fuller, clearer, more alive? Or do you feel subtly hollowed out, like your focus just got taxed without consent? Because it did. Energy theft doesn't always look like conflict. Most of the time it looks like compliance. It looks like quiet agreements you never consciously made. It looks like emotional labor you didn't sign up for. And it looks like autopilot, where you give and give and give until you can't remember what it even feels like to be full. Your phone isn't just a tool. It's a portal for intrusion. Every buzz, every alert, every dopamine drip of likes and mentions. Each one is a breadcrumb into a maze where your presence is fractured, where your spirit is not where your body is, where your life force is spent reacting to things that don't deserve your attention in the first place. And it's not just technology, it's people too. You've met them, you've felt it. The ones who never call unless they need something. The ones who always bring a storm and leave you to clean up the emotional wreckage. The ones who subtly manipulate, guilt trip, or play helpless just long enough for you to pour your soul into solving a problem that was never yours. Those aren't just bad habits or toxic patterns. Those are active energy drains, parasites of the spirit. They don't feed on your kindness. They feed on your unguarded compassion. Because deep down, you're a giver. You want to help. You want to love. You want to be enough for everyone. And that's beautiful. But without boundaries, even sacred waters become polluted. Even holy light can be dim. And here's the part no one tells you. Empathy without discernment is spiritual suicide. You cannot keep giving from an empty well and expect to feel whole. You can't keep absorbing everyone's chaos and wonder why your inner world feels like a battlefield. Every "I'll just deal with it" becomes an energetic contract. And over time, those contracts add up, until your soul is weighed down with obligations you don't even recognize as your own. You're not just tired. You're entangled. Somewhere along the way you were taught that your time belonged to others, that your value was measured by how available you are, that love means sacrifice, that saying no is selfish, and so you've learned to carry what's not yours. You've learned to perform peace when you're unraveling inside. You've learned to smile while bleeding energetically. But that's not love. That's programming, and it's costing you your vitality. So many of us have spent years trying to fix the exhaustion on the surface. More sleep, better time management, another productivity hack. But we never thought to ask, who is actually plugged into me right now? Whose emotions am I carrying? What have I agreed to energetically that is draining me without my permission? You can feel it if you slow down. That slight resistance in your chest when you say yes, even though your body says no. That invisible weight after a conversation that should have been simple. That ache behind your eyes after scrolling through an hour of other people's curated realities. These are the signs, the signals, the subtle whispers that your life force is being spent in ways you never truly agreed to. And here's the most dangerous part: you've gotten used to it. You've normalized the leak. You've adapted to living half lit, half here, half you. And maybe you tell yourself, this is just adulthood. This is just how it is. Everyone's tired. Everyone's overwhelmed. But that's a lie. A beautifully packaged, socially accepted, spiritually corrosive lie. You weren't born to survive energy theft. You were born to radiate, to walk into a room and change its vibration, to create from overflow, not burnout, to speak from soul, not from scripts, to live from presence, not performance. You are not a battery pack for the broken systems of this world, and the moment you realize that, something shifts. You start noticing the difference between someone who feeds your energy and someone who feeds on it. You begin to feel the quiet power in protecting your attention. You begin to reclaim your no as an act of devotion, not defiance. You stop apologizing for needing rest, for needing solitude, for not picking up the phone, for not answering texts, for choosing silence over explanation, because you realize that every time you honor your boundaries, you are declaring, my energy is sacred. And sacred things are not available on demand. Not everyone gets access to you. Not everyone is entitled to your presence. Just because they're loud, urgent, or familiar doesn't mean they deserve your life force. Let that truth sit in your bones. Your soul wasn't sent here to be drained. It was sent here to create, to connect, to feel fully alive. But you can't do that when your energy is tied up in invisible contracts, agreements you never consciously made, but keep honoring anyway. You didn't agree to perform happiness. You didn't agree to be everyone's emotional outlet. You didn't agree to shrink just to be accepted. Yet here you are, slowly evaporating under the weight of expectations that don't belong to you. And the scariest part is how quiet it all is. No alarms go off when you give away your energy. There's no siren to warn you when someone crosses a boundary. It happens in moments that feel small. A smile you force, a call you take when your chest feels tight, a favor you say yes to while your stomach knots. One by one, these little moments add up, and suddenly you're living a life full of obligations instead of alignment. This is how your light gets dimmed, not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 tiny concessions. You start to forget what full feels like. You stop remembering what peace sounds like. And the worst part? You start thinking this is just who you are now. Tired, dull, uninspired. But it's not you. It's the residue of 1,000 moments where your life force was taken without your full awareness. That's why awareness is everything. Because when you begin to see the drain, you can begin to seal it. You can begin to call your energy back, not just in theory, but in practice, in how you speak, in how you choose, in how you protect your presence like a sacred flame. It begins with permission, not from the world, but from yourself. The permission to not explain your boundaries. The permission to unplug. The permission to be unavailable to chaos. You don't need to justify your need for stillness. You don't need to earn your right to rest. You are allowed to choose peace without giving a PowerPoint presentation about why you're stepping away. You're not here to be accessible to everyone. You're here to be aligned with yourself. And that starts with learning the difference between a reaction and a response. Because most of the energy you leak doesn't come from doing, it comes from reacting. Reacting to texts, to emotions, to energy that was never yours to begin with. Every time you take on someone else's chaos and make it your responsibility to fix it, you lose a piece of yourself. But response is different. Response is conscious, it's intentional, it's rooted in awareness. You feel the emotion, you witness the trigger, and instead of immediately reacting, you pause, you breathe, you choose. And in that pause you reclaim power. You take your energy off autopilot and place it back into your hands. This is the art of selective reaction, and it's one of the most powerful tools of energy mastery. Not every comment deserves your reply. Not every crisis requires your involvement. Not every invitation is aligned with your frequency. Learning to respond instead of react is how you stop leaking and start leading. Leading yourself back to wholeness. Leading your energy back to the center of your being. And here's where it gets even deeper. Some of the greatest energy leaks don't come from the outside world. They come from within, from the parts of you you've pushed away, from the shadows you've locked in the basement of your soul. You think ignoring your pain makes you strong. You think suppressing your anger makes you spiritual. But repression is not the path to peace. It's the path to fragmentation. Every emotion you've ever buried is still alive inside you, taking up energetic space. And it will keep pulling on your life force until it is seen, heard, and healed. You can't create from your highest self while silencing your most wounded parts. You can't become whole while pretending you've never been broken. Integration is the only way forward, because when you turn toward the parts of yourself you've been taught to hide, the grief, the rage, the shame, you discover that they were never your enemies. They were your guardians, your protectors, the misunderstood keepers of your truth. Facing your shadow doesn't drain you, it restores you. Because every time you meet yourself with honesty instead of judgment, with love instead of denial, you call your power back. You call your soul home. And that's what this journey is really about. Calling yourself back to yourself. Piece by piece. Choice by choice. No one else can do this for you. No one else can stand guard at the gate of your energy. That is your responsibility, and it's the most sacred one you have. You are not here to be endlessly available. You are here to be powerfully intentional. Your life force is not a resource to be mined. It's a temple to be protected. And let me tell you something. There is nothing more revolutionary in a world addicted to urgency than choosing peace. There is nothing more radical than saying, I will no longer participate in my own depletion. There is nothing more powerful than becoming a conscious steward of your own energy. So ask yourself, where have I been giving from guilt instead of from joy? Where have I been saying yes to avoid conflict instead of honoring my truth? Where have I been available to everyone but myself? And then do something wild. Begin to unplug. Begin to disappoint. Begin to withdraw your energy from everything that doesn't honor your soul. Not out of anger, but out of reverence. Because your energy is sacred, your presence is medicine, your life force is not up for negotiation. Let the world adjust to your clarity, let the noise fall away, let the contracts dissolve, let the expectations crumble. You were never meant to run on empty, you were meant to overflow, and that begins the moment you stop living like your life force is disposable. The moment you remember that you are not just a body moving through time. You are energy, you are essence. You are the frequency of the divine made manifest. And you don't owe that to anyone who doesn't treat it as sacred. You don't owe your energy to anyone who treats your exhaustion like an inconvenience. The people who truly see you will respect your boundaries, not resent them. They won't make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. They won't question your silence when you step away to refill your soul. In fact, the more you reclaim your power, the more your presence will naturally repel anything that thrives on your depletion. Not everything can walk with you into your healed self. Some relationships will fade, some obligations will collapse. Some versions of you will grieve the approval you used to chase. And yes, it might feel like loss at first, but it's not loss. It's liberation. Because what you're actually releasing is the illusion that you needed to abandon yourself to be loved, that you had to overextend just to be accepted. that your energy was only valuable when it was being used by someone else. That illusion has cost you too much already. It cost you nights where your nervous system couldn't shut down because your boundaries were violated in ways you couldn't even name. It cost you moments of presence with yourself, traded away for the comfort of others. It cost you creativity, clarity, connection, and, most of all, it cost you truth. The truth that you were never meant to live a life that feels like constant sacrifice. You were meant to live a life that feels like alignment. And alignment doesn't drain you, it energizes you. It expands you. It invites you back into wholeness. But you can't align with anything sacred if your energy is scattered across 1,000 places that don't even reflect who you are anymore. So this is your moment to begin calling it back. Every fragment of your power that's still stuck in a people-pleasing pattern, call it back. Every ounce of your energy tied up in guilt, shame, or the need to be understood, call it back. Every part of your attention wrapped in fear-based scrolling, mindless consumption, and emotional reactivity, call it back. You don't have to beg. You don't have to fix it first. Just call it back. Whisper it if you have to. Cry it if you must. But call it back with the authority of someone who finally remembers they are sovereign. You are not a victim of the world's demands. You are the creator of your energetic reality. And the moment you stop outsourcing your power is the moment you become magnetic to everything that truly nourishes you. Your life force is your most precious asset. Not your time, not your money, not your image, your energy. Because without it, nothing else can be sustained. Without it, you're running on fumes, showing up as a diluted version of yourself, convincing the world and yourself that this is as good as it gets. But it's not. You were made for more. You were made for depth, for connection that replenishes rather than depletes, for spaces that honor your soul's rhythm instead of demanding constant performance. You were made for a life that feels like exhale, not just survival. And you don't need anyone else's permission to begin. You don't need their understanding, their approval, or their applause. You just need your own commitment, the decision to no longer betray yourself in the name of being polite, liked, or available. You just need the courage to be misunderstood in order to be whole. Because the truth is, you will lose people when you start honoring your energy. But you'll never lose yourself again, and that trade is worth everything. The world has conditioned you to associate worth with output, to feel guilty for resting, to apologize for being sensitive. But your sensitivity is not a weakness. It's your antenna. It's how you receive the signals. It's how your soul communicates. And if your body is telling you that something or someone is draining you, believe it. You don't need more evidence. Your nervous system is evidence enough. This is the wisdom of your body, the sacred technology of your soul. It knows what's aligned and what's not. It knows who nourishes you and who confuses your spirit. It knows when to expand and when to retreat. You just have to start listening again. Because when you stop overriding your inner truth in favor of external expectations, something incredible begins to happen. You start feeling again, not just emotionally, but energetically. You begin to sense the weight of unspoken contracts. You feel the subtle difference between a life-giving interaction and a soul-draining one. You recognize when your energy is flowing freely and when it's being harvested. And you stop rationalizing the drain. You stop making excuses for it. You stop pretending it's not costing you something sacred. That's the moment everything changes. Because that's the moment you begin to walk differently in the world, more rooted, more discerning, more luminous, not because you've become someone new, but because you finally remembered who you were before the world taught you to split yourself into fragments for its convenience. And yes, this will make some people uncomfortable. Your clarity will disrupt their control. Your boundaries will challenge their expectations. But that's not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for how others react to your healing. You are only responsible for honoring what your soul knows is true. And your soul knows this. You were not created to be consumed, you were created to be conscious. So breathe. Reclaim your breath from the chaos, let it become your anchor. Inhale your presence. Exhale your performance. Inhale truth. Exhale noise. Inhale sovereignty. Exhale submission. Every breath is a doorway back to your life force, and you don't have to wait until you're broken to walk through it. There's a silence that comes when you finally return to yourself. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. The kind that feels like home. The kind you didn't even realize you were starving for. And in that stillness you begin to feel something rising, a power you thought you'd lost, a clarity that doesn't ask for noise, a sense of self that doesn't need validation. That stillness is your sanctuary, and from that sanctuary you begin to rebuild. Rebuild, not from urgency, but from intention. Rebuild, not from exhaustion, but from alignment. Because when your foundation is rooted in truth, everything you create becomes an extension of your wholeness, not a compensation for your wounds. You stop trying to prove. You stop trying to please. You stop bending to be palatable to people who were never meant to understand your frequency. You begin to speak differently. You say less, but everything you say lands with weight. You move differently, with purpose, with presence. Not because you're trying to be powerful, but because you've remembered that you are. And power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet confidence of someone who knows they no longer owe their life to anyone else's expectation. This is where you begin to live from the inside out, not chasing energy but cultivating it, not seeking permission but giving it to yourself. You begin to live as someone who protects their peace as fiercely as others protect their possessions, because you finally understand that peace is your wealth, attention is your currency, and your energy is your kingdom. And in this kingdom, not everything gets through the gate. You learn to recognize the difference between a visitor and an invader. You begin to ask, does this align with my truth? Does this uplift my vibration? Does this interaction leave me feeling more like myself or less? You begin to filter your life not by convenience, but by resonance. And you let resonance guide everything. Who you talk to, how you spend your mornings, what you consume, what you say yes to. Because now you understand every choice is an energy exchange. Every agreement is a vote for your future. Every yes that dishonors your truth is a slow erosion of your soul. This is energetic stewardship, and it is sacred work. But don't mistake this sacredness for perfection. This path will still challenge you. You'll still feel tempted to overgive, to say yes when you mean no, to explain yourself to people who have already decided not to hear you. But now you'll catch it. You'll pause, you'll breathe, you'll choose again. And that's what matters, not perfection, but awareness and the willingness to return to yourself over and over again, no matter how many times you've wandered. You'll start to notice the spaces where you used to abandon yourself, in conversations, in relationships, in silence. And you'll meet those places not with shame, but with tenderness. Because now you understand you weren't weak for giving so much. You were just taught that self-betrayal was love. You were just surviving in a world that rewards burnout and calls it strength. But strength is not in the sacrifice. Strength is in the sovereignty. And sovereignty begins with one simple truth. You get to choose. You get to choose where your energy goes. You get to choose what you carry. You get to choose who gets access. That choice is your liberation. That choice is your revolution. So what do you choose? Do you choose to keep leaking energy into places that don't reflect your light? Or do you choose to gather yourself, to become whole again, not by effort, but by refusal? The refusal to shrink. The refusal to entertain what depletes you. The refusal to live a life that is always reacting and never receiving. Because the moment you choose to stop reacting to everything, you create space to receive anything. The good, the true, the aligned, the deeply nourishing. It all arrives in that space. the one you carve by saying no to the noise. That space is your sanctuary. And it's not empty, it's rich, alive, pulsing with potential, because you are no longer fragmented. You are present. And when you are present, you become magnetic to everything that matches the frequency of your truth. This is the shift the world doesn't prepare you for. Not the external change, but the internal reclaiming. The quiet revolution, where you stop chasing and start attracting. Where you stop over-explaining and start embodying. Where you stop giving your light to people who've never even looked for theirs. And the more you live this way, the more you'll realize you don't need to force anything. Not love, not success, not belonging. Because everything meant for you will find you when you are rooted in your own frequency. When you are no longer broadcasting from wounds or projections, but from presence. Presence is the portal. It's what allows you to feel what's real. It's what reveals the difference between what your soul needs and what your programming wants. It's what brings you back into the body, into the breath, into the now. And the now is where your life force lives. Not in the past you keep revisiting, not in the future you keep trying to control. Right here, right now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this moment of awareness, this is where your power has been waiting for you, not hidden, just buried beneath the noise. So let the noise fade. Let the urgency melt. Let the false obligations burn away. And listen. Listen for the sound of your own energy returning, the hum of your essence reassembling, the quiet pulse of your power rebuilding itself in the sanctuary of your own attention. This is not a performance. This is a homecoming. You don't have to do more. You don't have to be more. You just have to stop giving your life force to anything that teaches you to abandon yourself. Because the moment you stop abandoning yourself, everything changes. You begin to walk through your life like you belong to yourself again, like your energy is not up for grabs, like your presence is not a default setting for the convenience of others. Something shifts in your posture, in your tone, in the way you breathe when you enter a room, not louder, not harder, just rooted, just unshakably aligned. You'll notice people respond to you differently. Some will feel drawn to you, magnetized by the integrity in your energy. Others will resist, confused by the boundary where there used to be unspoken access. But that's okay. Let them. Let them wrestle with their own projections. Let them find their own center. You are not required to carry the weight of other people's discomfort just because you've decided to stop leaking. There is no guilt in protecting what is sacred. Your peace is not negotiable. Your clarity is not optional. Your energy is not for sale. You have already paid enough. You've paid in fatigue, in fractured focus, in self-doubt, in burnout disguised as love. And finally, you're done making payments on a life that never truly belonged to you. Because now you remember. You remember what it feels like to hear your own voice underneath the noise. You remember what it feels like to choose rest without shame, to choose silence without fear, to choose yourself without permission. This is more than healing, this is returning. Returning to the original agreement you made with life before the world tried to rewrite it. The agreement to be whole, to be sovereign, to be energetically alive. And when you live from that place, something miraculous happens. You stop searching for external validation, because you're finally resourced from within. You find yourself smiling for no reason, not because something happened, but because you're in rhythm with yourself. You find yourself saying no without flinching. You don't justify, you don't over-explain, you don't need to anymore. Because you finally believe that your peace matters more than their opinion. And in that belief, your nervous system begins to soften. The tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your jaw, the knots in your stomach, they start to unwind because your body finally feels safe again, safe inside your own energy, safe in a space where you are no longer being used, drained, or diluted, safe in your own sacred no. And the more you practice this, the more powerful it becomes. You start to feel what's yours and what's not. Energetically, emotionally, spiritually. You feel when a conversation is taking more than it gives. You feel when an environment pulls you out of alignment. You feel when your spirit contracts, when your breath gets shallow, when your presence starts slipping through the cracks. And instead of pushing through it, you pause. You pull back, you protect, because now you know the cost. Now you understand that every leak, no matter how subtle, comes at a price your soul is no longer willing to pay. Because you're done betraying yourself for the comfort of others. You're done being the strong one if it means carrying what no longer belongs to you. You're done pretending you're okay when your energy is screaming for reprieve. You're done being emotionally available for people who are spiritually unavailable to themselves. You are done, not with love, not with compassion, but with depletion disguised as duty, with performance mistaken for connection, with sacrifice dressed up as strength. Because true strength isn't how much you can carry, it's how willing you are to set things down, to say, this is not mine, to say, I will not keep pouring my energy into a cup that refuses to hold it. And yes, you may feel lonely at first. When you start removing the leaks, you may look around and wonder what's left, who's left. But you'll also feel something you haven't felt in a long time, yourself, your real self, the self that doesn't perform, the self that doesn't hustle for love, the self that doesn't need to be needed to feel worthy. You'll feel a sense of spaciousness, and inside that space new things will begin to grow. Aligned things. People who meet you in your fullness, not your fracture. Opportunities that match your energy, not exploit it. Joy that comes from wholeness, not compensation. That space will become your sanctuary, not because it's empty, but because it's clean, it's yours. And when something enters that space, you'll feel it instantly. The resonance, the expansion, or the drain. And you'll choose accordingly. Not with fear, not with guilt, but with clarity, with sovereignty, with self-respect. This is energetic maturity. When you no longer give just because someone asks, when you no longer confuse access with entitlement, when you no longer abandon your own needs in the name of keeping the peace. Because now you understand, any peace that costs you your energy is a war in disguise. So you stop fighting yourself. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop apologizing for needing rest, space, solitude, silence. You stop apologizing for protecting your energy like your life depends on it, because it does. And in that protection, you thrive. Your creativity comes back. Your intuition sharpens. Your body feels lighter. Your vision clears. You remember how it feels to live in flow, not force. In power, not performance. In truth, not transaction. And it becomes obvious. This was never about productivity. This was always about presence. This was never about time. This was always about energy. And this was never about being more to be loved. It was about being yourself to be free. You were never meant to hustle for worth. You were meant to radiate from wholeness. You were never meant to survive on scraps of attention. You were meant to be nourished by your own knowing. You were never meant to be available to everyone. You were meant to be available to your purpose. And now you are, because you chose to come back to yourself, to gather the pieces, to seal the leaks, to reclaim what has always been yours. Not your time, your life force. And it changes everything. There's a kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't chase. It doesn't convince. It simply is. You feel it in the silence, in the pause, in the space between impulses. And that space, that quiet, sacred space, is where your real power lives, not in the noise, not in the doing, but in the stillness. Solitude is not a punishment. It's a portal. It's not what you endure when you're disconnected. It's what you enter when you're ready to reconnect, not with the world, but with yourself, with your center, with the voice that's always been whispering beneath the chaos. But the world has taught you to fear that voice. It told you that stillness is laziness, that solitude is loneliness, that silence is a void to be filled, so you fill it with stimulation, with social media, with people, with plans, with endless ways to avoid being alone with your own energy. Because if you were alone, you might actually feel it. The emptiness, the grief, the burnout, the longing for something deeper. And that's exactly why solitude is sacred. Because it reveals what the noise keeps hidden. It brings the leaks to the surface. It shows you where you've been giving from deficit, where you've been outsourcing your power, where your life force has been slowly siphoned in the name of fitting in, keeping up, or not being left behind. Mystics knew this. Monks knew this. Saints and sages across time stepped away from the world, not to escape, but to return with clarity. They didn't isolate out of fear. They withdrew out of reverence. Because solitude, when chosen consciously, becomes a sacred recalibration. It's where you reset your frequency, where you realign your energy with what actually matters. And in that space, without the pull of other people's energy, something happens. You begin to hear yourself again. You begin to see where you've been overextending. You begin to feel what's yours and what was never meant to be carried. You sit in the stillness, and at first it might be uncomfortable. The silence might feel too loud. But if you stay long enough, it stops being empty. It becomes full. Full of insight, full of memory, full of truth. You remember the you beneath the obligations, the you before the roles, the you that doesn't need to perform to be powerful. And from that inner stillness, something deeper emerges: sovereignty. Sovereignty is not control, it's not force. It's the quiet authority of someone who no longer leaks, someone who no longer lives in reaction, someone who no longer allows their energy to be shaped by anything outside of their own knowing. But sovereignty requires protection. And that's where boundaries become more than personal development. They become a spiritual practice. Because every time you say no to what doesn't align, you are saying yes to your soul. Every time you decline an invitation that pulls you out of alignment, every time you don't respond to energy that feels off, every time you leave a space that feels heavy, you are honoring the temple of your own being. Saying no is not a rejection of others. It's a declaration of self-respect. It's a prayer. It's a whispered vow to your own spirit. I will no longer abandon you to make others comfortable. You begin to feel the difference between boundaries set from fear and boundaries set from love. Fear says, stay away. Love says, I honor you enough to meet you from a place of truth. Love says, this is how I remain whole in your presence. Love says, I don't need to control you, I just need to protect me. And protecting yourself doesn't require harshness. It doesn't require armor. True boundaries are energetic. They're felt. They don't always need to be spoken. Sometimes it's simply in the way you no longer engage, in the way you no longer over-explain, in the way you no longer shrink, just to keep the peace. And when the guilt comes, because it will, you meet it with grace, because guilt is just a shadow of the old programming. A ghost of the identity that said your worth came from how much you gave, how much you endured, how much of yourself you were willing to sacrifice. But guilt cannot survive in the presence of truth. And the truth is, protecting your energy is not selfish. It's self-honoring. It's how you become a clear channel. It's how you preserve your capacity to love, to give, to create, not from depletion, but from abundance. So, you begin to reprogram. Every time guilt arises, you breathe into it. You remind yourself, I am allowed to choose myself. I am allowed to rest. I am allowed to say no. I am allowed to walk away from what no longer feels true. You rewrite the script, the one that told you to be small, to be silent, to be endlessly available, and you replace it with a new story, one where you are whole, one where you are sovereign, one where you no longer bleed your life force into people, patterns, or places that don't reciprocate your presence. You no longer give your light away hoping to be seen, because you already see yourself. You no longer chase connection at the cost of your peace, because your peace is your connection to source, to self, to the divine intelligence moving through you. You no longer explain your healing to people committed to misunderstanding it, because your healing is not a debate, it's a decision. And every day you choose that healing, every day you choose solitude over noise, boundaries over chaos, stillness over performance. You build a life that reflects your highest truth, not a life of survival, but a life of spiritual sovereignty. There comes a point where you no longer want to just protect your energy, you want to master it. You want to track it like sacred gold, to understand its flow, to know exactly where it's going and why. Because once you've tasted what it feels like to be full, you can't go back to the silent starvation of unconscious living. This is where the practice of energetic self-auditing begins. It's the art of becoming radically honest with yourself every single day. You begin asking not just what you're doing, but what it's costing you energetically. You check in not with your calendar, but with your soul. You ask, where did my energy go today? Who did I give it to? What did I allow into my field? And how do I feel now because of it? It sounds simple, but the impact is profound. You start to notice the conversations that leave you depleted, the content that leaves you anxious, the spaces that feel like quicksand. And you stop making excuses for them. You stop saying, it's not that bad. You stop telling yourself to just push through. Instead, you acknowledge that every moment is either replenishing you or reducing you, and you start choosing accordingly. Journaling becomes more than reflection, it becomes reconnaissance. You use it to track your energetic patterns, to see which habits leak your vitality, to notice which times of day you feel most aligned. You write without filters, not to make sense of your day, but to hear the voice beneath your programming, because that voice is your compass. It tells you where your energy truly wants to go. And then there's breath tracking, not in some rigid, technical way, but as a gentle noticing. Throughout your day you pause and feel your breath. Is it shallow? Are you holding it? Are you breathing from stress or presence? Because breath reveals everything. It's the first place your energy whispers its truth. The breath shortens when you've left yourself. It softens when you come home. You start to realize that life force doesn't just vanish. It drips, one unconscious act at a time. Neville Goddard taught that your reality is a direct reflection of your inner state. So if your world feels chaotic, distracted, or draining, it's not just about what's happening out there. It's about where your awareness has been allowed to drift, where your imagination has been hijacked, where your consciousness has been scattered. So you bring it back. That's where the next level of this work begins, energetic reclamation. You don't just audit the leaks, you begin to close them. You begin to call your power back with intention, not once, not in theory, but as a daily spiritual ritual, a practice of energetic sovereignty. You sit, you breathe, you close your eyes, and you say, either out loud or in your mind, I now call back all of my energy from every person, place, thought, interaction, and timeline where I have left it behind. I call it back, cleansed, cleared, and returned to me now. You say it until you feel it, until your body starts to relax, until your spirit begins to expand again. You don't need candles or crystals. Just presence. Just awareness. Just your will to stop leaking into what no longer aligns. This is visualization as energetic medicine. You picture your energy as golden threads stretching out across your life, some tangled, some frayed, some still glowing, and one by one you see those threads returning, untangling, reinforcing your core, rebuilding your field. And then you go deeper. You do what most never think to do. You create energetic boundaries, not just emotionally, but spiritually. You begin crafting internal agreements, contracts with yourself and the universe about how your energy is allowed to be used. You say things like, "I do not offer my life force to confusion. I do not invest my energy in misalignment. I do not participate in dynamics that drain me. Instead, you create contracts of power and peace. I use my energy to create what aligns with my soul. I invest my awareness in what uplifts my frequency. I direct my life force only into what expands me." These aren't just affirmations, they're laws. Laws of your own sovereign field, because the universe responds to clarity. And when you're clear, you no longer have to beg for protection, you embody it. You stop asking the world to respect your energy and instead, you become the kind of person who enforces that respect through every choice you make, every yes, every no, every breath that pulls you back into presence. And you'll notice something strange begin to happen. Things that once had a hold on you begin to dissolve. Conversations you used to replay lose their grip. People who used to trigger you don't land in the same way. Environments that used to drain you no longer reach you, because you're not broadcasting on the same frequency anymore. You've upgraded your energetic standards, and those standards become the filter through which all of life must pass. This is not about perfection. This is not about becoming untouchable or cold. This is about becoming precise, about being so rooted in your own frequency that anything misaligned becomes immediately obvious and easily released. You don't fight, you don't explain, you don't chase, you simply redirect your energy back into yourself, into your vision, into your breath, into your peace. Because at the end of the day, nothing matters more than how you feel in your own field. Not your to-do list, not your image, not even how productive you were. What matters is how intact your energy feels. What matters is how well you preserved your life force. What matters is whether you lived this day connected to yourself or spent it scattering fragments of your soul into places that cannot hold you. This is the turning point, the moment you stop living like your energy is infinite. The moment you begin to treat it like sacred gold. The moment you decide that your life force is not up for consumption, it is for creation, and you, finally, are ready to create again. At the end of it all, it comes back to one truth. You were never here just to survive the days as they passed. You were never meant to watch your life go by in half-present moments while your soul screamed in silence. You were born with a frequency so unique, so powerful, that no one else on this planet could carry it. And that frequency, that essence, is your life force. Time may be spent, but energy is sacred. Time is measured in hours, days, and clocks, but energy is measured in presence, in clarity, in how deeply you are rooted in this moment. Time can be taken, time can be stolen, but energy, your energy, can only be surrendered. And that's why the world is constantly asking for it. Because deep down, on a level even they don't understand, they know your energy is the source, not just of your focus, but of your power, your intuition, your creative magic, your emotional radiance, your spiritual gravity. You are not tired because you do too much. You are tired because you give too much without return, because you respond to too many energies that don't respect your presence, because you forget that just existing is not enough. You have to exist in alignment. And alignment doesn't begin when the world approves of you. Alignment begins when you approve of yourself. When you trust your gut, your instincts, your boundaries, your pacing. when you start treating your attention like the spiritual gold it is, when you stop pouring your essence into cups that have no bottom, that's when you remember who you are. Not a machine, not a caretaker, not a source of endless yeses. You are a guardian. The guardian of your energy, the protector of your peace, the sovereign steward of your life force. And that role is not passive. It's not just about rest and self-care and saying no. It's about ownership. It's about standing in your full presence and declaring without apology, I reclaim what is mine, your power, your clarity, your voice, your rhythm, your joy. We call it back not just to feel better, but to be whole, to walk through the world as someone who no longer gives away their life force for acceptance, attention, or a place in systems that never honored your soul to begin with. You stop being a resource for the hungry mouths of misalignment, and you start being the keeper of something ancient, something holy, something that no one else can touch without your consent. That is where your revolution begins. Not outside you, not in trying to fix or change anyone else, but inside, in the space where you once abandoned yourself and now choose to return. Because every time you center your energy, every time you pause before reacting, every time you set a boundary that honors your nervous system, you are planting a flag in sacred ground. You are saying, this energy is not for survival, it is for creation, for joy, for presence, for soul, for truth. And that choice doesn't just change your day, it changes your destiny. It changes the people you attract. It changes the reality that forms around you. Because the universe doesn't respond to what you want, it responds to what you are. And when you are full, when you are whole, when you are rooted in your own vibration, life begins to mirror that fullness. You don't chase peace, you become it. You don't seek permission, you embody truth. You don't perform for love, you radiate wholeness. And everything that doesn't resonate with that vibration falls away, not as punishment, but as protection. Because your life force is no longer available for what drains, distorts, or diminishes you. You've remembered who you are. And from that remembrance, a new world begins to form. A world where your energy is not a leaking faucet, but a focused flame. A world where your presence is not depleted, but divine. A world where you no longer live on reaction, but intention. This is the way back to yourself. Not through perfection, not through more doing, but through returning. Breath by breath, choice by choice, moment by moment. Until one day you look around and realize you are no longer surviving your life. You are inhabiting it fully, deeply, powerfully, and you no longer fear being misunderstood, because the ones meant for you will feel your energy and remember something inside themselves too. Your clarity liberates others. Your boundaries awaken others. Your wholeness reminds others that they are not here to be consumed, they are here to be free. This is the revolution, quiet, sacred, unstoppable, and it begins the moment you reclaim your life force. So inhale now, slowly, deeply, and as you exhale, let every ounce of misused energy return to its source, not as guilt, but as grace. Because this breath, this body, this moment, it is yours again. You are the guardian now, and the gate is closed.